Okay, then we make it.
I'm Doug Kirkpatrick. I'm a partner in the New Focus Strategic Group. Our business is transforming organizations and smashing hierarchies and bringing organizations into self-organizing systems. I began my career with Chris Rufer. He's the founder of the Morningstar Company. I joined him at Morningstar in 1990. Shortly after I joined the company, Chris shared a document that he'd written called the Morningstar Colleague Principles, in which he proposed that we adopt a form of governance called organizational self-management. At the time, we only had 24 colleagues, of which I was one, and we met together in the evening in a construction trailer, and we shared this document, and essentially the document boiled organizational governance down to two core principles. One was that human beings should not use force or coercion against other human beings, and the second principle was that people should honor the commitments they make to each other. And those two principles essentially form the foundation of all law everywhere in the world. Every law against rape and kidnapping and murder and theft and burglary and assault and battery has to do with the principle of human beings not using force or coercion against others, and that's the foundation of all criminal law. The principle of keeping commitments is really the foundation of civil law, especially contract law. And so these are really the most foundational principles of human interaction. They are to human interaction what gravity is to physics. They're foundational and fundamental, and so we adopted these principles as the governing system of Morningstar, and we were in the middle of our construction project for our first factory. We finished the factory. We produced about 90 million pounds of tomato paste for the world market, and we changed the cost structure of that industry, and we basically did it without any human bosses. Everyone was a manager, everyone was a self-manager. Those two core principles essentially formed the entire governance of the enterprise and did so for a number of years to come afterward. So I remained as a financial controller for several years. I wore other hats in addition. Was involved in human resources and legal affairs and risk management and information technology and a number of other domains. 2002, I left Morningstar to go on my own as a business consultant, and have been doing that ever since. In 2014, I joined the New Focus Strategic Group as a U.S. partner with the intention of helping organizations transform and adopt the governing principles of self-management. Right, so in a self-managed company, much of the work is the same or similar to any other company. The basic fundamental difference is that there is zero command authority. So everyone is a manager in a self-managed organization. That means to the degree people are willing and able to adopt the functions of management, they do so. So virtually everyone is involved in strategy, planning, organizing, controlling, which has to do with financial functions and understanding budgets and return on investment and spending. Everyone is virtually involved in hiring and selecting new colleagues to work in the enterprise, and coordinating. Everyone's involved in coordinating their activities with every other person. So all the functions of management are distributed to every single person in the enterprise. That frees the enterprise up from having to hire layers of managers who most of the time are paid significantly more than the people under them. And it allows a company to increase the wages and salaries of virtually everyone, because everyone is performing all the functions of traditional management. Benefits are significant. So first of all, we avoid what Gary Hamels called the management tax, which means that we don't have a ratio of control or a span of control between, say, one manager for every 10 employees. That disappears. So we pay people more, but we don't have layers of management at all. And that results in significant financial and economic advantages. We also are better at decision making, we think. We think that involving and including everyone in decisions that affect them is critically important. And based on the principles that James Surowiecki outlined in The Wisdom of Crowds, we believe that we get better decisions as a result of organizational self-management. Sometimes those decisions may take longer than they do in a traditional organization, because one person can't just snap his or her fingers and make a decision affecting other people, but we believe we get better decisions. So those are some of the dynamics of organizational self-management. So financial decisions are just another category of decisions in a company, as are strategic decisions, as are personnel decisions, or risk decisions, or growth decisions. All decisions are ultimately allocated to an individual in a true self-managed enterprise. Individual human beings are the ultimate reality. Organizations are concepts. Teams are concepts. Departments are concepts. Companies are concepts. Only individual human beings can make decisions. Only individual human beings can take actions. And so a crucial principle of self-management is that every decision that must be made in a self-managed organization is allocated to one or more individuals, who then take ownership and full accountability for the consequences of that decision. And so this includes every type of decision, and so financial decisions are just another class of decisions that happen to be allocated to individuals who happen to have expertise in financial matters. The way that decision-making authority is allocated is based on negotiation. And negotiating power in a self-managed organization comes from one's expertise and proven track record of performance. So everyone carries a track record or a background, and everyone has a certain level of expertise in certain domains that are important for the function of the enterprise. So that is the stock and trade for negotiating with one's fellow colleagues about who should own which decision and what quantum of decision-making authority each person should possess. Some people may be completely accountable for making certain decisions. Others may be responsible for making recommendations for those decisions. Other individuals may be responsible for implementing the decisions that other people make. But negotiating all those decision rights and what decisions that each person is responsible for is a responsibility of each person, understanding their own level of expertise and the expertise of their fellow colleagues. The process of negotiation is sitting down around a table, just like this one, with one's fellow colleagues. We found that at Morningstar, people tend to have 8 or 9 or 10 fellow colleagues with whom they interact most often, and we ask them to identify those colleagues. We ask them to negotiate agreements with those colleagues. We call those agreements a colleague letter of understanding, and those letters of understanding have certain elements. One of the important elements is what processes each person is going to be accountable for, and what is the quantum of decision-making authority that each person possesses with respect to each and every process. Clearly, not everyone possesses the same level of negotiating ability as everyone else. So we do start with the foundation that everyone is responsible and accountable for the processes that they agree to be accountable for, that there is zero command authority. No one can direct the activities of any other person. No one can tell another person what to do. No one can fire anyone else. So those are kind of the starting points, and in addition to expecting each and every person to honor the commitments that he or she makes. So we start there, and then if people want to negotiate even formal hierarchies within their own department or area or functional area or division, that's perfectly okay, as long as it's completely voluntary and not imposed by one person on another. If one person says, you know what, I'm really not good at organizing my workday, I'd like you to organize my workday for me, that's perfectly okay, because the agreement was reached in a voluntary manner. So that's an actual hierarchy that was created through a voluntary negotiation, and that's perfectly acceptable in organizational self-management because it can be renegotiated at any time. It's a dynamic system, it's not static. Once there's some agreement in place, it doesn't mean that the issue can't be reopened and renegotiated. It can be at any time at the desire of one or more parties. Have the rules of self-management changed over the years? I think one of the really elegant and beautiful things about self-management is that it has not changed in 25 years. In the Morningstar case, we started with 2 core principles. Those have never changed. They have always remained the same. And part of the reason for their success is that they are so simple and so foundational to human life and human interaction. So they really form the culture of the company. So people respect these principles, they repeat them, they discuss them. When people act in ways that are not congruent with these principles, the culture rejects that. It does not accept behavior that's not congruent with the fundamental colleague principles. So part of the reason that Morningstar was able to scale from basically 0 to become the largest tomato processor in the world is that we were able to manage great complexity with great simplicity. We really boiled the governance down to 2 core principles and embedded that deeply in the cultural DNA of the enterprise and then of each participant in the enterprise. And so it was able to propagate and grow based on these very simple principles. It wasn't until we were 6 years into the enterprise that we started realizing, you know, we've grown to the point where we need communication and coordination tools, and that's where the development of the colleague letter of understanding came in. But we ran for 6 years with the entire governance of the enterprise essentially being 2 key principles. First principle is don't use force. The second principle is keep your commitments. Technology helps enable self-management. It's certainly a tool that makes self-management easier, but we were self-managing successfully in the early 1990s and basically managing most of our accounting, for example, on a spreadsheet. And we didn't have email at that time widely, and we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have mobile technology to speak of. So essentially we ran on a fax machine and with lots of paper printouts. And so it's absolutely possible to adhere to these principles without technology. Technology just makes the communication and the coordination easier. That's a very good question. what you referred to as low-skilled workers are actually some of the most enthusiastic proponents of organizational self-management. We recently did some interviews with people that basically were working for an hourly wage doing some discrete tasks in the factory. And their faces were happy, they were bright and shiny and glowing with enthusiasm for organizational self-management because it is the most humane way to manage. It respects the dignity of each and every individual human being, and the people at Morningstar that are performing these hourly tasks are very enthusiastic about self-management. We've had years where we've had factories where seasonal workers who work about 3.5 months and then they're laid off for 8.5 months. We've had a year or two where we've had 100% return rate from one year to the next of seasonal hourly workers who are working for an hourly wage that have been laid off for 8.5 months. And that speaks volumes about loyalty and enthusiasm and belief in self-management. So is your question that are there free riders who coast because other people are doing more work? People may try that. I'm sure it's been tried. But what self-management does is it gives a voice to each and every person. And everyone in the enterprise has an equal voice, an equal ability to speak up about issues that they spot in the workplace. Behavior that's not congruent with the mission or values or principles of the enterprise, performance issues, integrity issues, anything. Everyone is fully empowered to speak up about those issues and address them directly with their fellow colleagues without going through layers of management. So there is a level of peer accountability where peers hold each other accountable for their own performance and integrity and adherence to the principles. And so that level of accountability we think is greater than in a traditional management system. I asked the question, who's more likely to spot an issue, a threat or an opportunity in the workplace? A manager who happens to wander through a few times a day, or peers who are working side by side with each other all day long? And I think the answer is self-evident. It's a very good question, and we worked on that diligently for the last several years. I would start by saying that the hiring process itself is part of the onboarding process. It's not necessarily easy to get hired at Morningstar, particularly if you are seeking to perform a year-round professional role. Typically, I'll start by saying everyone has an affirmative obligation to identify the need for talent and to initiate the acquisition of talent that's needed. And so people will identify, we need help in a particular area, say it's a technical area. They'll seek out the help of colleagues with some HR expertise to do some recruitment and find some candidates. But the individuals that are going to be working side by side with a new colleague are the ones that are responsible for hiring, and they make the hiring decisions. So mechanics hire mechanics, and electricians hire electricians, and salespeople hire salespeople. Because who is more concerned with hiring the right person than the peers with whom that person would be working for perhaps years to come? So people are very careful, and it's not uncommon for a particular candidate to attend 3 or 4 or more group interviews over the course of a hiring process, and to answer many questions about their background and to get a really deep education in what self-management means and what their understanding of self-management is, because it's very critical that a person learn how to self-manage as quickly as possible as soon as they enter the ecosystem. So they learn a lot about self-management through the hiring process. And the hiring process could take 4 to 6 months in some cases. So by the time they come on board, they already know a lot about self-management. Once they're hired and have started work, we have a full-day orientation session where we do a deep dive into the principles and practices of organizational self-management. We include role play. We include interactive exercises, and we help people get up to speed with their understanding and their ability to practice self-management. In addition to that, since we don't offer that orientation every week or every month necessarily, a colleague such as myself from the Self-Management Institute, which is just another business unit in Morningstar, will meet individually with a new colleague and just engage in about an hour-long inquiry and dialogue about what self-management means. So a person gets a full education in self-management in the hiring process. They get a 1-hour dialogue with a person from the Self-Management Institute, and then they get a full-day orientation session shortly thereafter with a group of new colleagues. In addition to that, we've offered, in the last 3 years, we offered what we call a mini MBA. And what that consists of is a set of modules that deliver skills in organizational self-management, which are really the skills of traditional management that we expect every person to be able to execute at a high level. So we have a module about strategy and planning, and it goes beyond strategy for work and includes one's strategy for one's entire life. We go into financial literacy, and we help people understand P&Ls and balance sheets and return on investment calculations and a number of other financial analyses that they will be performing as self-managers. We dive into negotiation and teach negotiation skills. We teach mediation skills because everyone needs to be able to understand how to manage conflict and disagreement in the workplace, because there are no managers to settle those conflicts. We dive into leadership and communication and teamwork, and we cover business process analysis and business process management. So we cover all the functions of traditional management and give people about 100 hours of deep education, and we call it a mini MBA. We actually graduate cohorts with diplomas, so they come out and they are a certified self-manager with a understanding management completely. Yeah, I wish I could give you a percentage. I don't have a percentage off the top of my head. The hourly seasonal people are particularly at the factory level, are extremely loyal, and the turnover there is very low. I mean, the last time I measured it personally, I was looking at a 91% return rate for seasonal colleagues who are very, very loyal to the company. The turnover, I believe, for the year-round professionals is pretty low. Part of that is that people enjoy self-management because they have a large quantum of freedom and autonomy and the freedom to do their best work. So they're highly engaged, and they're well compensated. So the year-round cohort, the turnover is very low, but we do have some turnover, and sometimes that stems from individuals who've perhaps grown up in a traditional company. They've climbed a traditional career ladder. They've had perks and benefits, and people have deferred to them, and they had standing, and they had a title. And Morningstar has no titles. So when they come into the Morningstar culture, sometimes it's a culture shock. All of a sudden, they're just one of, 3,000 colleagues, because their voice is no greater than anyone else, including the seasonal people. All leadership and trust is earned, and it's earned through communication, and it's earned through influence and persuasion and building trust. And those things take time. And if an individual is not willing to invest the time to build relationships and develop that trust, they quickly find that they can't give orders. And so the culture tends to reject those people, and they tend to not be successful. I would say two kinds of people struggle in self-management. The first is the person who wants to be a boss and wants to give orders. They don't last. But also people that tend to lack initiative struggle a little bit, because self-management requires massive amounts of communication. You have to be constantly on and communicating, receiving information, transmitting information, and that takes energy, and that takes initiative. And so people want to just be passive receivers of information and not take initiative to share information. They tend to not be successful in self-management. Right, so the education system could help or hinder self-management. The fact of the matter is everyone's a self-manager in his or her own personal life. So we all decide, make large life-altering decisions on our own. We decide whether to go to Germany or San Francisco, or whether to go on a date or get married, whether to go to this university or that university, what to study, who to marry, whether to have kids, what to do with our careers, whether to buy a house. We decide all that stuff on our own. No boss tells us, you must do this or this or this. So people self-manage already in their own personal lives, and what we try to do in the organizational self-managed setting is to convince people that this is really an extension of your personal life, what you're already doing. You're already a manager in your personal life. Now just bring that mindset into the workplace. I think the traditional education system hinders that, because the traditional education system in the United States is based on the Prussian education system that developed in the 1840s. It's based on an industrial age model of command and control. And we are, right now, there is a big dichotomy between the traditional command and control organizational system, traditional command and control education system, and the way the world is trending. The traditional education emphasizes hierarchy, it emphasizes bureaucracy, it emphasizes following orders, and that's not the direction the world is going in right now, and that's not the direction that's supportive of organizational self-management. Is team spirit as important as individual self-management? I would say yes. I would say they're absolutely both important. As I mentioned earlier, ultimately, every activity and every decision in the enterprise must be allocated to an individual. Only individuals can act. But we expect individuals to coordinate well with each other, and that's what teamwork is all about. In a continuous flow process like Morningstar, receiving raw tomatoes, processing them into finished tomato products for the world market, it would be completely counterproductive for the field department to not coordinate with the factory, which would then not coordinate with the distribution and sales departments. All that continuous flow must come together as seamlessly as possible. That requires massive amounts of teamwork and communication. So yes, while individuals are responsible for particular decisions and particular activities, they must also coordinate with each other to make it happen. So recently met Rich Sheridan. He's the CEO of Menlo Innovations. I would recommend you talk to him. Tony Shea at Zappos is on an exciting journey there. And I would recommend you talk to Ricardo Semler at Semco in Brazil.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Wow! That was so fun! Yay!